Welcome back to Roundtail Restoration, everybody. My name's Chris. I'm restoring a 1964 Triumph TR4. Today is passenger floor day. We'll see if we can get the passenger floor welded in, and then the slow and tedious process of building up all the patch panels and everything else that need to then get puzzled on top of that so that you can keep the elements out of the passenger compartment. Always important. So, thanks for watching. Let's get it sorted. All right, you can see here I got a clamp over here, and the floor, both sides of the floor get tied into the prop shaft tunnel here. You can see these holes. I got the holes already drilled on the other side. I'm going to spot weld it in one spot here, and then one spot about halfway down from underneath, just to get that prop shaft tunnel anchored to the floor. And the problem is, or the concern is this prop shaft tunnel moves, and it moves the heel board. You can see as I move that heel board, this whole thing moves. And I'm afraid if I don't get it anchored in now before I'm ready to put the other floor in, I'm going to translate some motion back here, and it's going to not fit well or something like this. This thing was under tension coming out, so it kind of has flexed now and moved around a little bit. The heel board back here is not really that straight. It kind of falls in this way, and I don't know if that's some of me when I was welding it in or what, but I'm not going to be too concerned with it. But I do want to get that anchored in. When I get the body off and flip the car over, I'll get the rest of the welds done, but at least give me something now just so it's tight. Go ahead and clean this flange up and get some primer on there, some primer underneath the heel board and the kick board, the footwell flanges, and move another step closer to getting this floor in. All right, well, not pretty, but I guess it'll work. Now I'll go to the other side here and or down the center here, I mean, and get another spot in. So I mentioned that I've got a little bit problem back here, and if you can see, there's a little bit of an overhang where the floor sticks out, I don't know, 1/4 of an inch or so beyond the side here. Can't really have that because I'm not gonna have this repair patch fit flush, but the floor is as far over as it's gonna go. You can see that bolt hole lines up. These all are pretty much dead on, lining up. These are lining up. Everything looks really good. Can't move the floor over anymore. And now that this is kind of in there, that all looks good. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to cut here and just try to allow me to remove some metal from that cut and just allow me to kind of smack this over and fill that back in, and then tack weld it back up. That's going to have to require a little bit of adjustment, I think, on the patch. Probably not really. So this will just hopefully allow me to kind of fudge that in and get it lined up properly. So I'll just make, like I said, I'll take the grinding wheel, make a cut here, get rid of that metal, move it over. Maybe have to make a pretty big cut since it's, you know, it is 1/4 of an inch after all. But we'll see if I can't get lucky with that. All right, I think that'll work good enough. Just have to clean it up a little bit. Definitely doesn't like to bend like that, but that's all right. So we'll get that cleaned up. I think I got the floor right at about in the right spot. I got some bolts down, so now I'm going to scribe it and make sure my weld holes line up, which I've already punched holes in the flange back here. I just got to make sure that I'm actually on the flange, and we'll get the floor back out. Get the flanges painted, let them cure up, and then we should be ready to fly here. All right, there's that. Just got done putting the second coat of Weld-Through primer on the flanges and the places where I need to weld through. This is the Weld-Through primer that I'm using. It's UPol Weld number 2. I assume there's a number 1 maybe, or a number 3. This is the zinc one. They make a copper one too. Stupid expensive. I don't know why. All the Weld-Through primers, for some reason, it's like body filler. Go price. You want sticker shock? Go price body filler. But anyway, The other stuff that I had, Duplicolor, I think. I can't remember, SEM. I can't remember what brand it was. There's several of them out there. 3M makes one. But it was almost chalky and it would tend very easy to scrape off. This stuff is not like that. This is the second or third time I've used it now. I really, really like it. It goes on like silver spray paint, so it's obviously very easy to see where you've painted it. And, you know, silver is because the zinc, maybe, or they could have just colored it. But anyway, one of the misconceptions that I had about weld-through primers, you could literally weld through it. So you could like paint the surface and then put your weld bead and it would weld just fine. That's not true at all. It's still a paint. It's still dirty. It's still going to screw your weld up if you try to weld right on top of the actual paint itself. The only thing the weld-through means is that it's got that zinc in it or any metallic in it, and it allows the current flow to happen for your MIG welder, and that way you get a good, consistent current flow across, and while still also protecting the surface from rust and stuff like that. So you still have to go in and clean, like I'm going to do all these plug welds under here, still have to go in and clean the hole out where the paint is with that flat bit that you see me use. So just don't have the same misconception that I do. It'll still pop and snap at you, and you got to clean that stuff up. So not sponsored by UPol at all. Wish I was, but I did use their Raptor liner on the Spitfire, and I intend to use it here too. They, you know, the second product now I've had from them, the Raptor liner is great, held up, still holding up really well, and this stuff seems to be just as good. So I'd recommend it, but like I said, stupid expensive. 30 bucks, I think. So, you know, there's that. But anyway, back to work. Paint is cured, floor is in and tightened down, well, except for that bolt, got to get that one. The little bit of problem with the front, it doesn't seem to come out quite as forward. So when I try to get that to line up real well, these bolt holes get all messed up. But they all line now, even though that one's pretty close. The bolt will go in there. That guy's good. I slid a bolt down in there. This the gap back here is not as bad now as it was earlier, and you can see where I've gotten that now. Probably could come another 16th, 32nd of an inch or so, but I'm not going to do it again. I'll just hammer it. So, but yeah, so now I'm going to climb under the car and get a couple spot welds in the front, a couple spot welds in the back, and then that'll be floor in. So it took me, what, a year and something to do the first side, and maybe only a month or two. No, that's not true. A couple months to do this side, dealing with the weather and everything else. So, but moving along. So here's those two pieces, the big old patch, and then this B-post piece here, and the rough, very rough fit on those. This B-post patch is going to need to go in first, and then the big patch. Now I'm having problems. You can see the big old gap down there. The kind of the big gaps up here. Not real crazy about the fit of this right now, but it's still, I thought I was a little closer on the form of it to fit, but it's still not close enough to what came out of there. So I'm still gonna have to work this a little bit, but I should be able to get there. So now with the floor in, we'll do that B-post patch next, and then this big guy. And then we'll start building out the inner sill and the repairs that I have to do in that, especially in the A-post in here. That's going to be a challenge, and hopefully I don't regret not doing that before I put the floor in, just for room. Also want to get a spot weld on the prop shaft tunnel like I did on the other side, just to get that thing set up, but I forgot to clean the inside of it. It's all greasy and nasty and everything, so I got to get in there with a wire brush and some degreaser to get into that, but we'll keep moving on. So this is the A-post, and at the bottom there you can kind of see those black marks, so the light's not real great, but that's the piece that I've got to hack out and make a flange to be able to go on the inner sill. It looks like this over here. I mean, you can see that flange is all nice and flat. This was in pretty good shape. I got a little tip here that I got to fix, but I can't, in my mind's eye, see how I can make this flange here out of one piece of metal, even with the tipping die or anything like that on the bead roller. I'm just not seeing how I can do that. So what I'm going to do is cut out that piece of metal, and that'll give me the flat portion of it. There's also a little jog in there as it makes its own little flange, so that can be easy to do just with the bead roller. But we're going to go ahead and cut first instead of cut later, and then be able to get the sill in there, the inner sill, And then as I form this piece, I'll have the inner sill and kind of match it to it as I make it. All right, yeah, there's that. Some repairs to do here too. Big old hole up in here. Yucky. This is the donor piece of metal here, and I already kind of formed the flange. All I really did was, you know, trace it on the existing piece. One thing to point out, so you can see this extra piece of metal here, this little square, and that's part of the original inner sill. And I've got British Motor Heritage stampings, so I'm confident that the reproduction is pretty accurate. So that little sharp corner right there, fortunately, lines me up with that sharp corner right there, so I know exactly on this flange, if you can see how that would line up there, I'll know exactly on this flange where that lines up. So I've got the dimensions, I know how deep it is, how wide it is, all that good stuff, and I'll be able to hopefully reproduce this. So I'm going to clamp this to this hunk of metal here, trace it out, and then start to get going on doing this. Now, I had mentioned that there's a little kink here, right? This guy right here, you probably really can't see it, and it doesn't help that I'm not holding it real easy, but if you can see the shadow there, it's real subtle. That's that little indentation to accept the sill itself. All right, nice and straight, it's beautiful. That'll give me, that slop will give me some extra metal there that I always like to have because I'm not real good at this stuff yet. And you can see that this whole front corner was essentially gone, and I'm pretty sure that tapers down to almost a point, but not quite. So I'm just going to square it off so that I can get pretty close. So we'll go ahead, we'll cut this big, huge piece out, and then whittle it down from there, and hopefully when I get close, I'll just have this flat piece, and then the intention is to then take this flange here and weld it, and unfortunately make two pieces, but I don't know any other way to do it. All right, so you can see here I've got the inner sill in the car, and this is the A-post here that has the big patch, so I put that patch up here, and it fits the contour of that inner sill pretty well. And then I used a Sharpie just to mark. I'm going to cut some old metal instead of trying to, I got this fit pretty well, and instead of trying to remanufacture that curve but shorter, I'm just going to go ahead and cut the car. You can see with that black Sharpie that it's cutting quite a bit, but that's okay. Now the concern here is that stuff is going to change, right? So I've got the shims in the floor, and its floor is all screwed down and all that kind of stuff, but I'm still afraid that my heights aren't going to be right, and then the height of the inner sill is going to shift, and that's going to mess up this flange, and I don't really know what to do about that other than, I could, I guess, go ahead and get the sill in first. Maybe that's a plan there, and then that'll be set, and I'll know. But I've got some interference issues with the sill up in the heel board or the kick board up here that I want to take care of because it's not allowing it to sit in here real well. But this whole thing, this A post is going to come in, the B posts can come in, and there's a lot of moving pieces here that I don't want to get wrong. So we're going to go ahead and regroup a little bit, see what I can do about this, getting this inner sill to fit right up here, with also pain in the rear, getting it in and out. But that's what it is. So that's what we'll do, and we'll keep going. Mentioned that this was getting some interference here, and you're not going to be able to really see it, but the curve of my replacement patch is not matching, so I can't push this in this way far enough. And it's also, if there's a little tab that I stick out over here, and I think that's hitting as well. So I've got my Dremel here, and just going to try to just barely etch some of that metal out without removing the sill, because it's a real pain in the rear to get in and out. And this way I can kind of test it in situ, so to speak. All right, well, that worked. Not great. There's still a pretty good gap in there. but I still have to put the flange in. So maybe I'll cheat when I do the flange and use that to make up my metal. I also, the lesson learned from the last time, I want to put my holes into the inner sill for the plug welds for the flange instead of in the flange itself, since it is going to be a little easier to get at it this way. That's that sorted. So now I'm going to go ahead, take this piece of metal like I had mentioned and weld the flange onto it, and then probably just sit on this, putting this in. Without the paint, I'm kind of, I don't know what I'm going to do. I can, actually, I'm going to go ahead and get the retainers for the draught seal that's on the door. I'll show you that here in a second, so I can start repairing the door that's all eaten through and everything like that, those little patches. Got the piece set up in the bead roller here so I can make that flange to accommodate both the inner and the outer sills. This is one of those where you want to take a couple practice runs to make sure that you're going to bend your flange in the right direction. You may see the lines that are on there, and that's because I didn't bend my flange in the right direction. Not once, but twice. So now we should be good to go. So it's only going to be about a turn and a half, maybe turn and 3/4. And the other thing is I've got to go all the way in the back here to recover where I'm starting from, since that is not going to have the flange in it. At the tail end where I just started, that wasn't a very good sentence. All right, so I got that tight. Now I'll loosen it up, reset. Get it back in that groove there. Go another turn and a half or so. And come all the way back. All right, and there you go. So now I'll clean this up a little bit. It's got a little wonky in there, but that should be good. Well, it ain't perfect. It's a little sprung, but nothing that a little hammer won't take care of. Got to cut that little extra side off there, and I am, concerned about the weakness, because you weld on this side and grind on that side. You need good penetration there, but it looks like I have several good spots of penetration, so I think it's going to be good. If you have an idea on how I could have made that out of one piece of metal, I'd be interested to hear it, or if you guys have seen any videos on that. I mean, I was thinking shrink or stretch and all that. It's just this curve in here. I don't know how I would have bent that flange. I couldn't even think of a way to do it with the bead roller. But anyway, so that's, except for that little piece there, that's done. Move on to something else. Got that channel out of there, and all it is you can see it's all mangled here, but all it is essentially a U channel, and you just slide the pinstriping, or the drought excluder, I think it's called. The TR4 uses a 2-piece fuzzy seal, and then that harder rubber drought excluder. But you can see in here it's all in bad shape, so we're going to go ahead and get this somewhat rust removed with a wire brush. And then there's a big gap, or a big hole right here that I've got to fix, but I've got this bar stock in the way. Big hole down here that I can fix. Obviously all this stuff got destroyed pulling the old sill out. So just gonna clean it up. All right, so the first place I'm gonna do is right here. I'll zoom in on that and show you. All right, this guy right in here. You can see this hole up here, it's more circular. I did that with the drill bit, but the one below that obviously is nasty. And then down in here, I got some pitting. I really don't want to replace this if I can help it. I did on the other side. I wasn't real crazy about it, but I am going to have to at least replace that flange there and take care of some of that. And then up here, like I had showed you, that's a real big one there. And there's a couple other good ones. These feel like that's deep enough to probably need a replacement. And then this guy though, I think I can clean that up. But that's how that looks. So now we'll go ahead. I think I'll just chop that out real quick. Got that little piece of scrap metal that I cut off that flange right there. I think that's gonna fit just right. We'll get on that. All right, so I got that little piece traced out. Got that spatula thing in there so that I don't potentially cut into the metal behind it that's in good shape. So I'm just going to use my 4.5 inch angle grinder and go in that way. And then up here, I'm going to have to use the Dremel or something so I don't hurt anything. And I also have the rest of the B post in there that I got to worry about because I will cut into that as I cut this. So just a little tricky. Yet again, can't make a patch to save my life. That one's too small, that's all right. I'll just use this and trace it out. So that's that. So the next spot I'm going to do is down in here, like I showed you, where that's all beat up. There's a little nick here that I'm going to take care of, and there's a big crack right here, and there's pretty severe pitting, it looks like, behind here. So I'm just going to take that whole thing out. Just cut right along that, and then get a new piece fit up for that. The problem there is it's right on the seam, but so be it. That's right on the bend of the flange, but I should be okay with that. So we'll just go ahead and I'm gonna have to probably use the Dremel again just to make it a little cleaner, a little less dangerous. Well, I didn't really want that to come out in 15,000 different pieces, but so be it. All right, so we'll get this thing built back up. I probably should have just made one whole big flange here, but less welding is less welding. Get this whole thing made back up, hopefully, and get this welded back in. This one I will be able to weld because I don't need to prime or anything. I'm not covering any metal up. This little piece, you can see it's like a big long handle here. I just trimmed the edge and end of it to fit, and then I'll just tack it and then take this vice grip off. One thing that the vice grip is blocking is a hole here. This was cracked and from the brazing, I guess, or something. So I tried to clean as much of the brazing out of there as I could. Didn't get all of it, but I drilled a hole to stop the crack. And then I'll go ahead and weld that up. And then I don't think you can see this, but there's a notch here, just probably from a little rust pit. I'll go ahead and weld that up. Then I'll just cut this flush and that'll be that. And then I'll do something similar over here, and then I'll come back in and do this big old flange. So I had mentioned that this welder comes with a little switch, and you can turn it on grind mode and whatever, so that you can do some grinding. Yeah, well, it helps when you're done grinding and you go to welding that you flick that switch back to welding. My shrinker stretcher, this is the shrinker part. You guys have seen me use this many times before. The only thing with this is I'm not so sure that it's going to have enough oomph. Right, I'm going to try to use this piece of metal here instead of cutting a big one and then cutting a curve, you know, taking a big hunk of metal, cutting a curve. I'm going to try to actually shrink this, but I'm not so sure that it's going to be oomphy enough to shrink it, but we'll see. Oomphy enough, here's another one. Well, it's definitely putting a curve in it. I'll run it over to the car real quick, just back and forth. Shrinker stretcher did a good job, probably a little bit too good actually, and I ended up shaving this just to match the angle here. And I'll go ahead and get this clamped in here and then get it welded. So, come to think of it, instead of welding it from the outside here, I think I might want to try to get it welded from the inside. That'll hide this weld bead and be probably a little bit easier to clean up. But I've got the inner sill right now, and I can't really get to any of that stuff. So I might change my mind again, but I'm not going to keep welding right now. It's in there, it's solid. Still needs to get ground down and of a even thickness, width. But I'm not going to worry about that right now, I don't think. Yes, I am. Change my mind. Get the ruler. I'll measure however thick these things are, and then I'll mark it on there, and then we'll just take the grinding wheel and grind it down. Ended up needing less of a grind than I thought it would. Not too bad. So that'll work. Still, I'll decide later on what I want to do as far as welding it from the side, but I think that's going to wrap it up for my day's work, and it'll wrap it up for this video. So as always, thanks for watching, liking, comment, subscribing, hit the bell, notifications, that whole dealio. You know how the drill goes. But that's all I got. Have a good rest of your day. Cheers.